Honorable Musyoka, thank you so much
for
making time for this interview, for inviting us to your beautiful home.
Oh, welcome.
And this interview comes at a time when there's sharp focus on the role of the opposition in the country. Critics say it has somewhat been diminished by the effects of the handshake. The culmination was what we witnessed a week or so ago in Parliament, when the proposal for the 8% petroleum tax on fuel products was passed. Not only that, 1.5% housing tax, tax on banking services, and tax on money transfer services. And Kenyans are already feeling the effects of this by the surge in prices of basic commodities. Now, the most unprecedented thing happened is that how we had a bipartisan approach in Parliament to make sure this goes ahead. And you were very much involved in this, urging Wiper MPs and NASA to go through ahead and support this. I mean, are you proud of being part of this process that has brought so much pain on Kenyans?
No way I can be proud of causing pain to Kenyans. The truth of the matter is we are a nation that is feeling the effect of heavy taxation. And yet, at the same time, it is important to recognize that since the days of the NAC coalition, and I know we've been around since that time, effectively so, steering the affairs of a nation, we are proud to be one nation that has been able to provide 98% of our development budget. I don't know if the Kenyans know their countries in Africa. We rely heavily on external support, even to pay their public servants.
Right.
Now, Kenya has not been in that category. And yet, at the moment, I know the agony that President Uhuru Kenyatta has been going through as head of state, clearly, and one who is elected by the common person. And I think, I didn't watch his interview, but I'm quite sure he was able to elaborate on the pain this was causing with the 60%, I mean, moving from 16% of VAT to 8% of VAT.
Although it was 0% to 16%
and then from, some people say it is 0% to 8%.
Right.
I think that going forward, we may have to really look at how we can continue to relieve the burden of the Kenyans. But I've also gone on record, Hussein, to say that it could have been possible to avoid this burden if government had the time to get all the monies that have been stolen, and lots of them. We know there are monies that are stacked in foreign accounts. Okay. If these proceeds of corruption were remitted back home, then we should have, we do not have to, burden the Kenyan taxpayer.
But some would say you're being too lenient on the government. It was just months ago, or I think a year ago now, when we saw you in the campaigns. You were piling criticism on this government, on the Jubilee government, especially on bad economic practices, especially on borrowing.
Yes.
The NASA manifesto, for instance, I'll read, talked about they need to achieve, I mean, when you come to power as NASA, you achieve prudent management of public debt to lower its cost and risk by fiscal consolidation to reduce the large fiscal deficit, which you say is a driver of rapid accumulation of debt to lower single digits level. Again, strengthening the institutional arrangement of public debt management, talking about implementing structural reforms to support and improve tax collection. I mean, what changed? Isn't this hypocritical from you and other NASA leaders? Raila Odinga specifically, when they said this should be supported. You are very clear that Jubilee is over borrowing, Jubilee is not handling the economy very well. Why would you just be too lenient and agree to these proposals?
I don't think we are too lenient. As I said, it's a very difficult situation that the country finds itself in. Had we taken over leadership, I can tell you the first thing we would have done was to renegotiate the debt burden. It is not too late for President Uhuru Kenyatta to take that leadership and renegotiate. If we renegotiate the debt burden, then it's possible to actually have a relook at the taxation proposals that are now in place. Because clearly we are overtaxed and everybody accepts that.
So why didn't you give that condition to your MPs in Wiper?
Well,
so
you
that
remember,
this happens before you decide
you remember,
to burden Kenyans even more.
I think that when NASA met at Orange House, they came up with something that other people started saying, oh, this is hypocritical, you either oppose or support. But let me tell you, I also expected serious debate on the floor of the House.
Which didn't happen?
There's no serious debate. I think what there was is emotional whipping.
You are part of the whipping. You told white MPs to go.
Yeah, we said
and do this.
That's right. But
even after you say that the process in Parliament was not right, you did not come out to again say this was wrong and ABCD should have been done.
No. When we said I remember we met some of the Wiper MPs at the new Wiper headquarters, and some of them, the media was like saying, you people are forcing members to take a position. We said no. We're just giving direction. We're giving. It is not a must that you must vote this way and that way. Yeah. But we also expect, and I said personally, I would support the proposal by the president because I knew where it was coming from. If you imagine, for instance, that Rwanda, as we speak, does not buy fuel coming from Kenya. And the reason is, it is adulterated. You mix diesel with kerosene. So we lose that market. And Rwanda now gets, energy requirements service from elsewhere. But the point of the matter is, it is not lost. It is not all lost. It is possible for us to look at each other in the eye and say, when are we getting this process of corruption? Yeah, and with that, can we alleviate this particular burden? Okay, so it is unfortunately a case can be made for the fact that following the handshake, maybe the opposition feels compromised.
And that is what my question is.
Yes, I mean, and I want to tell you...
Has it weakened the opposition? Are you doing this because of the handshake?
I can tell you that we are not compromised. We cannot. Some of us would always call us paid as paid. Unfortunately, we are not in government. Sometimes you are tempted to say, listen, we told it, tuliwaambia, tuliwaambieni, and we look at what has actually happened. But this is not the time for it. And I don't want to be held captive by the past, even in terms of what proposals we promised. We now must assess the situation, the current situation, and focus to the future.
Okay, now that you've talked about that,
yeah.
How would you oppose then if you're saying the handshake, has not weakened the opposition? Because all over pundits, it's very clear, they say the handshake has weakened the opposition. You had a plan, for example, including the 7 pillars, electoral justice, reducible minimums that you're giving as NASA. Do you now support the issue of building bridges initiative as a solution to Kenya's problems? Because you had different solutions then.
When I came back from Germany sometime last year, I think from this particular place, I made a passionate call for dialogue. Because I've always believed in dialogue. I don't think confrontation or politicking 365 and a quarter days, all right? And within 24/7, although I've always called for a 24-hour working economy,
yeah.
I think the Kenyans have to sometimes take a break and reflect, all right? And that is what you're actually even doing in NASA. But even as we speak, there are things that should have happened. I believe myself we should have reconstituted the IEBC. The IEBC is a disgraceful institution.
Even now?
Even now. That to me is an urgent issue.
So where have all those calls gone to? Because people actually died in the quest for electoral justice. And why haven't we seen you and other NASA leaders talking about it?
I'm now telling you that IEBC needs urgent reform. I want to accept, I'll give into this, that the perception is there that since the handshake, the opposition is weakened.
Is that a fact or a perception?
I think that's a fact.
It's a fact.
That's a fact, and Kenyans have a right to feel. And the reason that is happening is we haven't, for instance, as a summit, the summit of the NASA political parties, ODM, Wiper, Ford Kenya, and ANC, we have not met. And if we don't even meet to assess situations like this and take a common position, then clearly, Kenyans have reason to think that we have let them down.
Now that you talk about NASA, you say NASA still is when I asked you earlier.
Yes.
Let's talk about what some of your colleagues have said before. When we had an interview on this same show, Newsnight, with Moses Wetangula, he called it moribund.
Moribund, yeah.
Okay. Mudavadi says a lot has still to be done to save NASA. Odinga is the only one who's saying NASA is still as vibrant as it was. You are now accepting and actually acknowledging that a lot needs to be done as well. And you haven't even met as a summit before. Is it time you call for a eulogy for NASA? Do you think NASA still exists and NASA is still going to work?
Eulogy is such a negative, Mohammed. I cannot go that way. I believe there is always a possibility because legally, and that's why I said NASA, as we speak, it is on paper the coalition that is in opposition.
Not in practice.
But moribund, as my brother Moses Wetangula will say, I would perhaps allow him to be entitled to that opinion. And I think the reason is, if we cannot meet, then Moses Wetangula has a reason to feel concerned. And I think we are working on this. And we haven't met to dissolve NASA. Under its terms, any three political parties that decide to walk away from NASA, then you can say NASA, you can write the eulogy that you're talking about. Okay.
I'll come to more about those agreements within NASA. First, I'd like to ask you, are you now fully, or have you fully embraced the handshake? And when? I know you talked about dialogue before.
Yeah.
I know you talked about your heart being at peace.
Yes.
But when did you embrace the handshake? And are you in the
I
handshake?
actually
What is your role with
I
it?
embraced it before it happened. And that's why you heard me even say, oh, I see. I've watched these two friends, from a handshake to a hug. And I call it a hug shake at the national prayer event. I was happy, to be honest. But happy, but also concerned whether, and that's why I said this must really also get devolved, cascaded to every level possible, so that Kenyans can again look at each other and say, yes, you look my brother, you look like my brother, you are not my enemy. Because you are Kikuyu and you are Kalenjin and Kamba and you are Luya and Mijikenda. This is actually the problem.
But
43 nations, that, and this problem of lack of inclusivity is the biggest challenge. Apart from fighting corruption, the next thing, and I think I will have occasion to comment on corruption, but we must really accept that the winner-take-all thing is what has brought terrible confusion. Therefore, if we are going to have a platform, Mohammed, where we are able to deal with the problem of negative ethnicity through building bridges, whatever it is, initiative, building of the bridges initiative, and so perchance we are able to cross the River Jordan and avoid the crocodiles therein, as Raila would want to put it, then why not? Any opportunity for dialogue is important. Therefore, I completely and fully support the initiative.
But has it cascaded down, as you said, not even to the ordinary Mwananchi, to even you yourself as Kalonzo Musyoka, who was vying as the running mate? Because we've had Raila Odinga saying very clearly, this handshake was between me, that is Raila Odinga, and President Kenyatta. President Kenyatta also reiterated it and actually said only him and Raila know the deeper meaning of the handshake.
And that they need to share that with us, to be honest with you.
So you know
because they must remove that cloud of suspicion about the handshake. I support the principle behind it, that is going to bring national healing, national cohesion, right? Remove toxic politics from our midst, and be able to live as brothers and sisters. But the details, this is where I'm a bit concerned. If the 14-member committee has not even sat, or I had the last time I checked, they seem to have some difficulties with the budget. They need to be able to keep the country informed on what they're actually doing. So it cannot, now the issue cannot be now between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Prime Minister Raila Odinga. It is now beyond them. And now it behoves them to be able to cascade it.
But they say, some people in NASA, some leaders in NASA, including a key leader, that is Honorable James Orengo, that, only those, in fact, this is on Raila's side, your side as NASA, that only those who attended the January 30th swearing-in ceremony should have a right to talk about being included in the handshake. What do you make of that? And now that we are bringing that up, where were you on this specific
That's a negative approach to it. And to be honest, as I talk to you as an officer of the High Court of Kenya, a practicing advocate of good standing, I think, and the things that I saw, commitment to the rule of law and things like those, right? I don't want to go into that right now. But that is water under the bridge. There's been a lot of disinformation about the 30th of January affair, And I think Kenyans are moved on.
No doubt about that.
I was called a lot of names, but I'm used to being called names.
But was it
a
fair description?
One of the things, for instance, I told my friend Raila, and he knows it. I told him, yeah. Even when I was in Germany, the German ambassador was calling me and everybody, asking, after the swearing in, are you going to State House, or are you going back to Karen and going wherever? You know, we must not act in a manner that misleads our people. And therefore, this is painful for me. But the truth of the matter is there are people who misadvised my brother Raila about the 30th of January event. That is the truth. Because the entire of the international community, we are going to be looked at as pariahs, okay? But the cheap ones who want to say, okay, this one is the one who stands for whatever. But I'm sorry about this, but it is terrible. It's terrible. When I reflect about it, I've always stood for honest politics and always guided by what is reasonable, what is in the best interest of the nation. I'm happy that people eventually called it a mock thing. If it is mock, it is mock. But at the time it was supposed to happen, right? Kenyans did not think it was a mock. They thought this is the real thing.
But
right?
Constitutionally, it was never going to be a real thing, Honorable Musyoka.
Of course it wasn't.
So what was the issue? If
issue
you're
was,
talking about Raila Odinga,
psychophancy is part of it. Anybody saying wherever we went, we are given a Bible and hold the Bible and swear, we have a duty and a responsibility as leaders to always guide proper guidance to our people. Therefore, this is an issue that is now part of our history.
Okay, but
had I come to think of it, and my friend Raila knew I was not going to take that oath.
He knew that.
He knew that.
So was it hypocritical of him when I interviewed him just a month ago again on Newsnight, and he said, all of you knew, all of you were supposed to come, and you just didn't show up, and so there should not be any excuses.
The truth is, and this is factual, between Raila and I, Raila knew he was going to take that oath alone. And when we had the last rally, I think in Homa Bay, he spoke deeply, in a very reflective manner, that now I've decided to take this journey. Okay? I never believed in it myself.
Why didn't you say it then publicly?
No.
Before the day itself, because people were expecting you.
No.
Why didn't you say it?
Again,
after you were asked this question.
When I was in Germany, remember there were 2 attempts to swear my friend Raila, right? I reached out to them. I reached out to Mudavadi, to Wetangula. I said, this is not proper. All right? And there was another one where I think in Islands, where we even lost lives. Okay? I was still out of the country. I still did not think that should have been the way to go. I did the best I can. You also don't want to rock a relationship. If you find people are moving in a certain direction, and it's like you try to tell them publicly, you look terrible. Okay, you allow them.
That's one way. That's one way of looking at it. Some would say that is hypocritical as well.
The most important thing is between Raila and I, Raila knew I was not going to take that oath.
Okay, after that, well, actually during the day when you were asked, this is in the past, but again, as I said, it's a matter of principle. First you said you were under house arrest.
No.
You talked about security. You talked about security.
There was something thrown here. By the way, a grenade was thrown. Right. And one, I think, a police officer in Nairobi said that an avocado fell on the building here. These are terrible stories. I don't want to think about it.
And I'm sorry about what happened to you. But I mean, you talked about security issues. Then you talked about this being a strategy. Now you're actually saying you never were for this thing.
No. The truth is, take it from me that we knew, Raila and I knew, that he was going to take that oath alone. I wasn't going to take it.
You talked about the problem in this country of winner takes it all.
Yeah.
And this is now moving this conversation forward. Talking about a different way of doing things, isn't it? I would assume that is a different structure within which an election should be held. And a different structure of governance. But you are here, of course, you'll tell me if that is what it is. That is my interpretation. Of course, there's another distinct point of division on this handshake issue, and that is whether we need to change the constitution or not. And the calls for a referendum, of course, it depends why you're calling for a referendum. How would you weigh in? If the constitution is to be changed, especially in governance, what would you want changed and to what end?
We said that we would amend the constitution.
Of course.
And have a structure of government, apart from anything else, the structure, because that is where the problem is. Uniting this country, right? When, for instance, and I'm sure that President Uhuru and Deputy President William Ruto do know this for a fact, that within the wider context, they are seen as representing two communities. And the reason NASA was attractive is we're seen to be representing minimum 4 communities. This is our undoing. So if we don't address that through a constitutional amendment, we will be failing this country. We said we will have a president, a deputy president, okay, perhaps 1 or 2, have a prime minister who is appointed by the president. That is what is in our document, appointed by president, but of course must be approved by parliament. And therefore, clearly, the leader with the majority,
more or less parliamentary,
that kind of thing. Yeah. And we're assuming because NASA was going to have that situation, we are looking at ourselves as such. And even if it was not us, we still recommend this document as a framework. It's a reference point. Kenyans may want to speak to it, either dismiss it or accept it. But this was a very clearly thought out position with regard to the structure of government, which would be an improvement, all right, to what we have in terms of Constitution 2010.
But some have actually talked about this as just a way to create more positions.
No.
Is it a problem of people and how they are in leadership, or is it a problem of structure? How many times do we need to change constitutions, to change laws? Don't we have enough already? So we have all these positions. How does it help inclusivity if the people themselves in those positions do not believe in that?
You know, Mohammed, in 2010, I had said in a very sober, reflective mode, heard what the church was saying and what the rest of us were saying. And although I was for the yes campaign, right, I was given a tag, which is a terrible tag, okay? But I've come to accept it. Because when you are called a watermelon, my friend, and every time there's a little disagreement, whatever, yeah, and when I supported my friend Raila, I was no longer a watermelon. When I didn't go for the swearing in, I'd have given you the reasons, right? You know, you're called a watermelon again. I think leaders, successful leaders, are those who take a position and stand by that position. Why am I telling you this? Everybody accepted that Constitution 2010 had a 20% situation which was not acceptable. And everybody said, we will deal with it later. Now, which later would one ever imagine, if it is not now? Therefore, I want to encourage all of us to be bold, yeah, and accept that the time for this change is now. If we are going to do a deathly blow to tribalism and negative ethnicity, this is it. And if we have it written in the Constitution, even the percentages we talked about in terms of devolution, so that it is not the governors, county governors will not be at the, really living out of the goodwill of whoever will be the president at that time.
Right.
We make these things above 15% clear. And also, of course, make sure that these governors also stop the stealing.
Okay. We've talked about the war on corruption and some
Yes.
of the positives that Honorable Odinga says has come out of the handshake. First, what do you make of the heightened war against corruption? Before I even go into seeing you in court the other day, participating or defending Deputy Justice Philomena Mwilu. First, what do you make of the war on corruption?
Thank you. The war on corruption is a very timely affair. And I must congratulate President Uhuru Kenyatta. I've said it publicly. And it's not even, I think it's even goes beyond his own legacy. Because if he wants to establish a legacy, this is also a positive thing to do. But I think it behoves all of us as Kenyans to realize that corruption is very costly. They say that it even fights back. The time for all of us to really unite and slay the dragon of corruption is now.
So they're doing it the right way.
For me, the right way. And therefore I must congratulate the new the new kids in the block, okay, the DCI, Director of Criminal Investigation, Mr. Kinoti, and Mr. Haji, yeah, for really making it. And again, also, I've always said to President Uhuru, if you blink on this one, then you lose everything, including your country.
Some would say, although you are within your rights as a lawyer,
yes,
to defend Deputy Justice Philomena Mwilu,
yeah,
some would actually say, now that you're saying this, it reeks, or it looks like double standards from your side. I mean, I have never seen you practice. I know you're a lawyer,
yeah,
but I've been seeing you more in politics.
You should never hope to meet me in court.
I hope not.
Yeah.
But we have never seen you. There's a whole generation that has never seen you as a lawyer, yet you went to defend Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu. Why? Why was it important?
First of all, I think the issue was weighty enough. When you talk about number 2 in the judiciary, and I've always held a very strong view, this to me is critical. An independent judiciary is what this country must always aim to achieve and sustain. Now every Kenyan will know that following the events, and we had it, this was canvassed publicly, because the conditions under which the Deputy Chief Justice was arraigned in court smacked of an attempt to demean that institution. And therefore I felt, though I've not been in court publicly, but I do a lot of legal work. I have a law firm which is running, and as a lawyer I'm not supposed to advertise, but I can tell you it is unethical to advertise. But I've actually been a lawyer in good standing, nearly 40 years of practice. Let me tell you that matter, and at even occasion I can actually openly tell you, because I had to talk to the president about it, and said he actually himself knew about the arrest of the Deputy Chief Justice when he was away meeting Donald Trump, okay? And he made every attempt to say this cannot proceed without, and I think he tried to reach out to the Attorney General to reach out to the Chief Justice, because if you want to deal,
proceed?
The procedure is simple.
If
you really want to deal with the Deputy Chief Justice, you don't arraign them before a magistrate's court. What image are you giving to that profession? There's a procedure. And the procedure is this matter should be referred to the Judicial Service Commission at that level.
And the president, you're saying, you're talking to him, and
the president told me he was surprised. He was surprised that the Deputy Chief Justice had been arraigned in court, was going to be arraigned. So he actually told the Attorney General, this is critical, you must do. So if the president himself took it upon himself to deal with the matter, because he knew the sensitivity of the matter, why would anybody think that the Vice President cannot go to court? Because I'm actually a good lawyer in good standing, and I felt that this is the time to stand up. Now there are moments in this country for justice, for independence of the judiciary, because I cannot really, this for me is so basic, I told you, right? It's about the independence of the judiciary. Independence of the judiciary, integrity of the judiciary. Right. Yeah, and I said in my brief submission before the chief magistrate, right? And I think he handled the issue very well himself. Because point was, we didn't want the Deputy Chief Justice to take a plea, because had she taken a plea at that point, and by the way, as I speak to you, these are also matters in court. Yes. So we cannot go into the merits. We cannot go into the merits. No doubt about that. But I mean, again, I said, there are so many other government officials who have been arrested, and big government officials who have been arrested. They didn't come to me. I mean, if they come to me and seek legal advice. So why this one? Why are you having a lot of strong feelings? But I can also tell you, by the way, I think my partner in the law firm was supposed to appear in the Swazuri matter. Okay? So when we approached, we'll also look at some of these issues. And we must distinguish between the fight against corruption, right? Because that I uphold to be absolutely important, right? And also doing things that are in the best national interest. You know, also as an elder, because I think I'm an elder now. Exactly. Yeah? My appearing in court is, my going to court also sends a signal. And the signal is, no, don't overstep. So you think this was overstepping? I'm sure. It was definitely overstepping.
And it's not double standards again, because you're saying
no,
the
no
more
double
corruption
standards.
should go,
No
should
double
go on,
standards.
because why don't you just let the procedures go on and we
No,
find
no
out?
double standards here. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll ask you then this final question.
Because it's again a civil matter, and you want to just drag the Deputy Chief Justice before a magistrate's court. That is basic, my friend.
We all know what happened.
Somebody has to say no.
Okay.
Somebody has to say no.
In her affidavit, she actually claimed that there were efforts to remove her from office after nullifying President Kenyatta's election in the majority Supreme Court ruling. Being her lawyer, defending her, and they actually talked about these feeds of the threats of the president after the nullification. As part of the legal team, do you believe this? Do you believe this is the reason?
Well, listen, my friend, the matter is again in court. I actually saw the Director of Public Prosecution. I respect him very much in what he's doing. But when it comes to discussing this matter, yeah, not in court, all right? It amounts to trying the Deputy Chief Justice in the public arena. And that is unethical, okay? Absolutely unethical. So she's also entitled to in her pleading, say whatever it is that she needs to say. Okay. And of course, those matters will then be canvassed at the right time.
But you're part of that election.
Of course.
But do you think it has anything to do with that?
Do you remember that Raila Odinga was petitioner number 1?
Exactly.
I was petitioner number 2, okay? But since then, matters have moved. I would myself want to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture here is integrity and independence of the judiciary. If there are anybody, if there are threats issued against the
you don't think it's part of that?
They're inappropriate. Absolutely.
You talked about the NASA several times in this interview, that MOU by NASA and
Yes.
the agreements that you made as NASA. Many people have been talking about NASA being dead or not, but you're saying it has to be revived and it is still there and a meeting has to be held and NASA still has to move on. Do you believe still that the NASA MOU should hold? And I'm asking you this because just last weekend, and this has there have been pockets of this remarks by ODM leaders, again including Senator Orengo, who say that
it's actually a coalition chair.
Yeah.
Along with
the coalition chair.
Just remind you, Senator Mudhama, Senator Orengo,
and the Selisimi.
Agoi, I think it is, for ANC, and the Secretary General of Ford Kenya.
Ford Kenya. He says Raila Odinga should vie again in 2022 and should go for it again. What do you think? What do you make of that?
Well, I look at that as political posturing, and people are entitled to this. I respect Jim Orengo quite a lot. We will cross that bridge when we get to it. And on matters that go to the core of a coalition arrangement, like in the case of NASA, desist, particularly if they are, as my friend Jim is, a coalition chair. I would advise him, really, to address it in his own mind and say he has said enough and leave it. Because then, people accuse him of saying, unless you say Raila must be president, you cannot be elected. Unless some fellow in Machako says Kalonzo must be president, they cannot be elected. And this is it. This is a level of sycophancy we must deal with now. We cannot accept it.
The agreement, what we had last year.
Yes.
I actually talked to you about this. ODM wasn't supposed to field another candidate had NASA won the election. Or I don't know, if from your interpretation, if it was either way. So my question is, now that they're saying Raila Odinga, who's the ODM leader, should still vie for 2022, should that be, according to the agreement, according to what you believe?
I don't want to deal with that one. I don't want to deal with it at this time. There are issues of urgent national importance, including really listening to the suffering voices of our people because of taxation, because of poverty. But on the other hand, if we begin now to say 2022, who is supposed to run, who is not supposed to run, well, it was the Prime Minister of wartime Britain, the famous Churchill, who said, a week in politics is a very long time. We're talking about 4 years almost. That's a long time. Clearly, when we get to that place, as we move in that direction, you can take this one to the bank, Mohammed Hussein. There will be political realignments.
Within or even without NASA?
Within, without, come every which way, but loose. Yeah,
I mean,
every which way.
I remember you talking earlier this year when you actually launched the
One Kenya
movement.
Yes, sir. If I would be going out to run for the presidency.
Would you be?
Which is an obvious matter.
You'd be running.
Obvious matter. Because sincerely sitting where you are, would you expect me to go and support my friend Raila for the third time? Would you? And would you think I'll be within a proper frame of mind to take that decision? And yet, maybe situations could also arise, which may make it imperative for me to support him a third time. Okay? That's what I'm saying. There'll be alignments and realignments. But as I speak to you now, everybody expects the time is now. In fact, this is a delayed issue. This country would have moved in a positive, in a different trajectory had this decision been taken correctly.
Right.
Yeah. And this time, I think I just want to leave it to Kenyans to begin to reflect on it.
I remember when you're launching the One Kenya movement.
Yes.
And you actually said you reach everywhere, every place in this
yes,
country.
Indeed.
I don't know how far you are with that. But I remember when you said, and I'll quote you here, I'm going to reach to everyone. I will see Mzee Moi, Mzee Kibaki, I'll see Mama Ngina, former president, both former presidents, Mama Ngina, First Lady, Mama Ngina and President Kenyatta. They are not NASA-leaning people necessarily, and this is why you're talking about alignments that
national
could be
unity
out of NASA. My question is, if you're going on with this One Kenya movement, what takes precedence? One Kenya for you or NASA?
Well done. Again, we are at the very initial stages. What we did as a party is, by the way, to form a task force, which is reviewing that position. I just gave I said that this is a matter that will have to be subject to a delegates conference. Yeah, if you're changing a name of your party from Wiper Democratic Movement to maybe One Kenya Movement or another movement, okay, you need to call a delegates conference. With regard to the outreach, it is not too late. I still look forward to meeting Mzee Moi. I look forward to meeting Mzee Kibaki, Mama Ngina, and others. But I think my friend Raila beat me at it. Okay, he beat me at it. So that I wanted this to settle, and then I, of course, go out, because we all need to reach out. And it is good. It is good. But don't be surprised to see me, all right? Because I saw my friend William almost very angry yesterday. And one thing I've learned in politics is never to be angry with anybody. Yeah, I don't think anybody owes me any political debt. This I've learned sincerely, and you get what you go for. So this time, we are going for it in 2022.
You'll not settle for running mate, like we've seen over the last two election cycles.
I cannot be a professional running mate, can I? A professional running mate? And please, I remind you, I ran for the presidency in 2007.
Yes.
And the time to give it the real shot is now. And I make no mistake about that.
You talked about the...
And therefore, if I'm going to be president, I'm not going to be president of just Wiper. I must go out to every part of the country.
Regardless of what NASA thinks.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is not acting in breach or in contradiction of the principles and the values of NASA. Okay? Remember, we are just a coalition. And something that when our friends in ODM continue talking that language, they're actually inviting us now to tell them, okay, that's what you want.
Options. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the people, I mean, you've just talked about him now, Deputy President, and what you saw yesterday. And you're saying,
he looked very angry, very angry. I once told my brother Weta, and Weta and I are very good buddies, I can tell you this. All right? I told him, Weta, don't show anger to anybody. This is my own lesson. I used to be very angry. I used to get angry, Hussein, with you, with everybody. But now I've learned, if you're going to be a true leader, you must take it in his stride. That's my advice to William, because I think Raila has perfected this one. He doesn't fall in that category. Or my friend, in fact, because I think they outmaneuvered each other with the Uhuru during the campaigns. So the rest of the crowd simply preparing for combat, political combat. I don't think it's right.
One of the people, you talked about Deputy President again. So he's one of the people you're most likely going to face because he's already saying he's going for the election in 2022.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with him, especially after the handshake? And do you think he has what it takes to lead Kenya?
I cannot make a judgment on somebody who could end up being my worthy competitor. When we get to that, we will deal with it. Okay?
Okay.
But as of now, I have no issues with any leader because the time I'm inviting them to think. And let me tell you, Hussein, that everybody you've mentioned has been able to get into this gazebo for political discussion. Yeah.
Over the years.
Whether it's President Uhuru, Deputy President Ruto, right? They came in a company of a gentleman who was, and that story is in my book. I'll give you a copy of the book. Raila himself has been here many times, okay? And all the other political leaders.
In that book, the Deputy President, of course, discounted what you said in an interview we did last year. Where he said...
He never came here?
It was No, he actually says what you said in that book was hypocritical. How you were told not to go for the top seat and all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you expect him to say? Okay. Again, I think my problem is I practice politics of honesty and decency. Maybe this is my undoing. That's why sometimes I think perhaps an infusion of some kind of rough tackling. But I don't believe I should change because it is good for the country.
I remember at some point during the campaign, as you wind up now last year, you talked, I think, in Tarakanidi, if I'm not wrong, or Meru, and you actually told the people there that you should not vote in Jubilee.
Yes.
If for any reason to ensure the deputy president is not president. Because having Uhuru's 5 years again would continue the Jubilee plan of having another 10 years.
That could very well be, on a light note to Hussein, that could very well be the majority view now. What I said there.
Is it still your view?
Yeah. Of course.
And why?
Well, I'm just telling you, I don't want to do that because I think there will be, I don't want to lay a ground for my friend. There are times when William Ruto will say, Steve, continue being our big brother.
Okay.
These are all my brothers.
All right.
These are all my brothers.
Just recently, you were in China in a trip reportedly organized by the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Kenya.
Yes.
To be in the government delegation for the Forum of China-Africa Cooperation. What exactly was that? Because actually people said, is this a new role for Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka after the handshake?
Well, I just went as a delegation. The president invited me to join the delegation, and there was nothing wrong with that. And also took into account the fact that I've worked very closely as foreign minister and also vice president with the People's Republic of China. I value very much the relationship between Africa within the framework of FOCAC, which is Forum for Africa-China Cooperation. And I have also been listening to what our citizens have been saying with regard to the debt issue. So, need to renegotiate our relationship.
Okay.
And I know that China is not in Africa to colonize China. They are doing a lot to improve, to colonize Africa. But they are here to improve. They come as actually good friends. And our friends in the West have been shouting. They've been shouting, oh, you people are getting colonized by China. But if you look at what they are doing, building airports in Namibia, in West Africa, in Angola, everywhere, and they do things in record time. But if you don't also talk to them seriously, they give you...
the country in debt, isn't it?
This is the thing. Right now, we accept that every Kenyan born today...
And they will be the master ultimately if you cannot pay this debt. This is why people are afraid.
This is why we must renegotiate. I've heard people say that if we default in our arrangements with them, they'll take the port of Mombasa. That cannot happen. That cannot happen.
Thank you so much. And we wish you the best.
Thank you. Can I probably, Hussein, give you a copy of my book?
Yes, please.